Good evening. Bonjour. I have the hardest task of the day, which is to keep you alive after a dense afternoon. So I was thinking maybe you could get up. No, it's not a joke. And then you breathe. And then, if you, yes, twice. Ça fait du bien. You can also move the head. Okay. And the last time. Thank you. Thank you. Personally, I would have loved to have the aperitif now. I know we'll have one, but it is not the time for aperitif. Alors, I have been asked by EASA to speak to you about Operation-Centric Certification, and I will detail this new bird. So I will start by a small story highlighted by this picture. A few years ago, Airbus had the idea to use the energy delivered by the wake vortex from an aircraft, assuming we could fly close enough to him to retrieve this energy. This is what we called formation flight. There is a leader and a receiver. We must fly not too close to avoid the turbulence, but not too far to still retrieve energy. So we developed this concept, we flight tested it, and it was successful. And it was welcome. It was welcomed by the operators, saying, yes, we can save fuel. For us, it's better. Less fuel is also less weight. And at the end, it's less operating cost. And also for the others, even the air traffic management. Yes, just to tell you a small story. I like the small story. Yeah? It's end of the day. I had the opportunity to join a flight test. And when we left we left Toulouse from France, we moved to the air traffic control above the Atlantic Ocean. And you know, when the pilots contact the air traffic control, hello, A350, Fox, such and such, we said our registration, and the air traffic control said very simply, hello, Airbus Patrol, nice to hear you. So do not think sometimes that you are called Airbus Patrol, but the momentum went there. So to make it happen, a few figures. We make also a flight from Toulouse to Montreal in Canada, around 8 to 9 hours. And at the end, the fuel saving we measured was significant. Close to 2 new generation of engine if we had to redesign the propulsion system. So it was enthusiastic. The operator, this is what we need. Yes, we want it. And also for us, you know, the objective of decarbonation by 2050, having less fuel consumed, you know that the less emitting, less polluting energy is the one we do not burn. So less fuel burn, less emission, and therefore better compliance with these objectives. So the enthusiasm was there, the concept was demonstrated, but then the stations of the cross started. And I will develop later, but one of them was ATM, besides the Airbus Patrol story, said, by the way, you know, our duty is to separate aircraft, and you want to bring them closer. So how will we manage the induced risk? I will come back on this. Alors, we started the stations of the cross, going to the EASA, start first with EASA. They welcome, but the concept was not obvious. As we are merging operation with certification, normally it is separated. We went to Eurocontrol, saying we have to change the ATM. Eurocontrol said, why not? But I have explained. And then the National Aviation Authority, which in Europe has to deliver the operational certification. Some of them were enthusiastic, some of them very reluctant. So after a given day, we came to EASA again and saying, we have to introduce something which is not new, that you have introduced for the drones, which is Operation-Centric Certification. And Operation-Centric Certification, we would like to use it also for commercial aviation. So what is it? But it's an innovative transverse compliance methodology approach which bridges all the stakeholders and interfaces the facets of initial airworthiness, what we name usually type certification, the air traffic management, and the flight operations. And in fact, it's a structured transverse certification exercise that aligns the standards for certification, allowing easier implementation of new technologies and innovation to the benefit of operational safety and performance. We are manufacturer, we are committed to safety, but we're also committed to performance. And we're in a competitive environment, better performance of aircraft make it also happening. So why do we need this? I have mentioned the difficulty to negotiate separately with all the stakeholders. But today we do not have a holistic mechanism that addresses the entire spectrum of aircraft certification in correlation with operational dynamics. I will show you later, there are already something small initiatives, but here what we want, it's a radical change. And also, this approach of OCC, Operation-Centric Certification, is needed with the introduction of new products and with what we call new concept of operation that modified the conventional aircraft operation. What I call conventional is today, you know, the classical profile of a flight. We embark at the gate, then we have the push, then we have the engine run, then we taxi, then we align, we take off, we climb, we go to cruise, and then we descend and up again to the gate. And what if we change the propulsion means with new energy? What if we have expandable wing in flight? What if we make formation flight? So we need to revisit the CONOPS. And what do we need to make it happen? But you have seen that with this example of companion flight that I like, but we have in fact to revisit the global safety of the flight of the operation. We are introducing new risk, flying closer, but also opportunities, which is introduced in all affected areas. So new risk, new opportunities, we have to revisit the responsibility of the stakeholders. Typically, in the case I have given, which risk mitigation should be taken by the aircraft manufacturer, and which risk the ATM would have less or more to take into account. Also, we have to explore mitigation strategies, and therefore, to do so, we need a strong cooperation between all stakeholders. It is a must. Typically, to give you, besides the companionship flight, we have also this question, which is not new neither, which is this question of 4D trajectories, which directly falls into this category. Today, 4D categories, it's also a nice concept, but difficult to put in place. Another drawing to say better what I have said, we have today three main stakeholders. EASA, which certifies the product with the manufacturers. In Europe, Eurocontrol with the air navigation service providers, which helps to the aircraft design and integration in the airspace. And in Europe, the operational approval is granted by the NAA. The regulatory framework. The good thing is that in Europe, the basic regulation does not object to the introduction of OCC. It was a very important milestone. It means that it can be handled below. Instead, the basic regulations support innovation, harmonization, and collaboration, which are key pillars that OCC aims to strengthen across aviation operators. However, the current certification process and the corresponding implementing rule Part 21 procedures are not sufficient to manage this transverse certification with the associated global safety demonstration. To make a long story short, global safety, you speak with everyone. No, safety, it's you. But no, safety, it's not me, it's you. You know, and typically, what we wanted as an aircraft manufacturer is at the end, all the safety requirements of all stakeholders are put only on the aircraft itself. We could not achieve this alone. So, regulatory framework, there is a need to introduce this framework into the EU aviation system that supports the certification of new products with the implementation of innovative CONOPS. I will come back on the CONOPS. And for sure, I have spoken a lot for Europe. Florian said at the beginning, it's worldwide, but doing so would also ease the foreign validation of this kind of operation. Alors, another slide based on the image concept. On this slide, you have the 4 stakeholders today in Europe. The authority, plus I have taken the example of the FAA in the United States for the validation. We cover the product certification. Then we have some EASA, FAA, NAA relating to the training approvals of this kind of operation. The National Aviation Authority, which deliver the operational approval, and Eurocontrol for the airspace integration. There is already today a small bridge which demonstrates that cooperation between the stakeholders is possible, which is OSD, Operational Suitability Data, where we translate the consequence of the new design into training requirements. And then we are looking at, we want to innovate. You know, sometimes we say innovation, but to innovate, to certify innovation, we have to innovate in the certification. It's going together. So typically innovation for us, it's new function, new operation, new architecture, new technologies, such new propulsion means, etc. And then we have this question of CONOPS. CONOPS is concept of operation. Again, very nice idea, but when we make the analysis, you will tell me, I must keep you alive, not too long, but when we investigated, ICAO is speaking of CONOPS. Yes. EASA is speaking of CONOPS. I am looking to EASA, I look to the first one, but EASA has written something on CONOPS. EuroCAE is defining a standard of CONOPS. Cesar U-Space is also speaking about CONOPS. When you look at this, behind the name, you have not the same reality. So the first step was to harmonize, translate what is a CONOPS, which is the objective of operation, the scenario, but also the global safety objectives. And then we move to it. Behind the global safety objective, what is the contribution to each domain? What are the safety barriers we can introduce, not only the type design? And finally, very important, we introduce the notion of residual risk, because sometimes in the mindset of people we are there, safety means no risk. No, safety means controlled risk, properly mitigated, and a residual risk is not a non-compliance. This is something also to change in the mindset. Residual risk, the risk is accepted, but to level which is controlled, and if not, cannot be controlled, it must be mitigated. And at the end, you recognize a landscape which is complex, but it is a reality. It is the European reality, and to know a little bit also the other aviation authority, if it is presented differently, it is also complex. So we had the idea to make first one team, gathering all the stakeholders, and one journey starting from what we want, where we want to innovate, what is the consequence of the CONOPS, and what is the global safety objectives. And we made it. Okay, this is the point we have presented. This is what we mean by OCC. I will accelerate to bring this concept, to bring all the stakeholders together. In terms of documentation, we have proposed to build an operation-centric certification program where we all agree of what we have to do and what are the responsibilities and duties of each stakeholders, with a common understanding of the CONOPS, the safety objectives, the corresponding responsibilities, and once compliance is demonstrated, we can deliver the operational recommendation. Alors, having said that, it's a word that Alain Leroy is also using quite frequently. Having said that, Alain is a friend, we work close together. We said we cannot implement this concept without revisiting the way of working. And EASA was open, accepting to say this is a new challenge. If we want to do it, we have to revisit the way we work with the industry and vice versa. So we made a working group. We identified 8 clusters on operation-centric side and with the consequence of new way of working. Operation-centric, I have detailed it. New way of working means project management. We have different stakeholders. Competence and knowledge. We have said sometimes this afternoon we are siloed, but we have to think also in mind what means siloed. We are human, and we are comfortable where we work in our perimeter of competence. And if we want to work with other people on other fields of knowledge, At least we have to expand our knowledge, at least to understand what the others are doing. Not to become an expert in all fields, but really to be able to work together, which starts, by the way, what the others are doing and why they are doing that. Okay? And also governance and escalation process, because one of the stakeholders totally disagree, who at the end will be the authority which makes the mitigation and the balance. Voilà. Alors, to prepare this, EASA, it has been already said in one of the panel, EASA proposed a new contract service, which is called pre-application contract, between the industry who would like to promote innovation and EASA, where we could establish mature requirements in due time. We could shape the operation-centric activities with the new CONOPS. We could harmonize what means a CONOPS, and we could bridge the current entity and organization not used to work together. It means once we will show the real application, people are aware and already prepared. Finally, OCC, it's a new concept for aviation with a better bridge of type certification, ops, and ATM. It is driven by innovation. It's a must to innovate. Okay? Also by the introduction of new technologies and operation. It is simplifying the activities to be carried out by the involved stakeholders, the authorities, the manufacturer, the operators, their traffic management. And here a parenthesis of simplification. We welcome the initiative which has been launched by the EU Commission to simplify, but for us, manufacturers, simplification is not only a question of less or more simple requirements, it's also a new way of working. It's a working more efficient. Working together and more efficiently will also lead to simplification. Not to be taken, this is to be taken into account. Finally, it's a coherent, more efficient way, I have said it, but, and this is the last things, it will require a substantial change in the way of working with the willingness of all stakeholders to make it happen. And I thank you for your attention.